Hello, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ashley Gillis, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I currently practice in the state of Utah, and I currently work at a multidisciplinary clinic. So I see a variety of ages, a variety of populations. And I created this channel because I wanted to kind of get the information out to a larger group of people. I'm definitely not your cookie cutter therapist. I'm very non-traditional with therapy. I have a stance that I feel like mental health is kind of BS, and we've kind of all been lied to, and a narrative has been pushed that I don't necessarily agree with right off the bat. That might scare some people away, and I'm okay with that. But if you continue watching my videos, you will see why I feel that way and why I have essentially created this channel. So if you are the type of person that you've been through therapy, you still feel stuck, you've learned some skills, and yeah, they kind of work, but again, you're still just feeling stuck, then you are in the right place. I am going to go very underneath the surface, and I'm going to put parts of the therapy modalities together in maybe a way you didn't even know existed. And maybe you've heard some of the terminology before, but you've never seen it put together like this. I've even had clients that have gone to very expensive retreats and have come to me and said, this is so simple, and I've heard all this terminology before, but I have never seen it put together like this. And then by the time they're done, they never come back to therapy. I essentially like to tell people the education that I give is kind of like if you've ever been in a situation and the brain essentially gets to know too much, and it's like, I can never go back to that place, or I can never go back to being that person. I know too much now. My kind of therapy and education that I give people essentially is that's what I see a lot of the time is people get to a point where their brain knows too much and they don't ever really go back to the person they were. And more times than not, my clients do not ever come back to therapy when they're done with my kind of therapy, with my style. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, buckle up. We've got a lot of information that we're going to cover in these videos, a lot of different modalities, and I'm really, really excited. Before we get started, I am going to go ahead and just read the slide that I have. Just, it sounds a little bit more professional, but like I said, I'm not really your professional cookie cutter type therapist. I'm not here to fix people. I'm just here to give people the information. So, hey there, my name is Ashley Gillis. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And if you have ever found yourself stuck in patterns of anxiety and or depression and thought, why do I keep doing this? Then you are in the right place. This channel is all about going underneath the surface, not just what we feel, but why we feel it, especially when it comes to your core belief system that we carry about ourselves, others, and the world around us. I'm here to break down therapy concepts like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness, inner child work, communication, on and on and on, in ways that are actually understandable and usable. You do not need a PhD to benefit from the tools of therapy. You don't need a master's degree. You don't need any college level education to benefit from this. I know, to my knowledge, therapists all have to have at least a master's degree to do therapy. I don't want that to intimidate you. You do not need to have an education or be a certain status to use these skills. Okay. If you are not into overly clinical buttoned up approaches, same here. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to offer tools, perspective, and a little clarity so you can begin the work. Not me. I don't do the work for you. Even my individual clients will tell you I don't do the work for them. They do the work. Okay. We are going to explore how your deep rooted core beliefs feed anxiety and depression. You're actually going to learn that your anxiety and depression are just symptoms of mental health. They are not MDD and GAD clinical anxiety depression. You'll learn that when you continue watching these videos. So if you are ready to dig a little deeper and see what therapy can actually do, subscribe, and we're going to go ahead and do this thing together. Before we get started for today, what we're going to go over today is we're going to do what is cognitive behavioral therapy, and then I'm going to start breaking down the thoughts piece and thinking errors in that. But before we even get started, I'm going to try and put this in all of my videos. But I have two disclaimers. Number one, I will not view or respond to any comments on any video I ever post. This is because, unfortunately, we live in a society where a lot of people are online and a lot of people like to talk. I am not interested in negative banter back and forth. I'm not even necessarily interested in positive banter back and forth. Like I said, I'm not here to fix people. I don't want to argue with people online. Again, whether it's positive or negative, I want to give you the information and you do what you will with it. Leaving a comment is not going to get to me because I'm not going to view them. I appreciate positive feedback. I really do. But I'm not going to go back and forth with people online. I just don't think it's beneficial. Again, whether it's positive or negative, I think sometimes even when things start positively, sometimes they can manifest into a more negative thing. And I just don't necessarily want to go back and forth with people. If you have a question, comment, concern of any kind, whether it's positive and or negative, please just email me, utlcsw@gmail.com. I've got it posted here. I've got it in YouTube. It's on my Instagram. I've also put my name to make it as easy as possible. UT stands for Utah. Just like I said, I am licensed in the state of Utah. And then LCSW is just licensed clinical social worker. So utlcsw@gmail.com. Any comments, questions, concerns of any kind, positive and or negative, please email me because I will not respond back to comments. I'm not going to go back and forth online and possibly create tension between people or groups of people. Okay. My second disclaimer, these are educational videos only. This is not intended to replace actual therapy. Yes, I am a therapist. That does not mean that you're going to get therapy from YouTube. Okay. I want to make that very clear. If you are in therapy, I encourage you to continue seeing that therapist. And if there is something in these videos that jumps out to you, please, by all means, bring that up to your therapist. They can help you explore that a little bit deeper. If you were in group therapy and you hear something in here, I encourage you to take that to your group therapist and whoever is running that group, and they can help you dive into it more. I will not, if you reach out to me for any kind of individual therapy, I unfortunately will have to decline. Like I said, I do work at an interdisciplinary clinic where I have plenty of clients already. So I will not be a replacement for therapy. Okay. I just want to make that very clear before we move forward. But we are going to go ahead and just continue moving forward with what is cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT, those of you that have been through therapy have probably heard this term. Even people that have not been through therapy have probably heard the term cognitive behavioral therapy at some point in their life. And what this is, it's a very simple modality, but it's very, very intense on the amount of information that can come from this modality. So I like to break it down as simple as possible. So what this says is cognitive behavioral therapy is a way to kind of unlock your cognition to in turn have better emotions and behaviors. Cognitive behavioral therapy is taught by way of the CBT Triangle. You can go into Google and type in CBT Triangle. 1,000 options are going to come up, probably even more. Don't let that intimidate you. They are all depicted the exact same. Every single one of them is depicted the same. They just look different. Okay, probably for copyright reasons if I had to guess, but they all look different, but they all say the same thing. So I have provided just a very simple one here on the screen for you. And what this triangle says is anytime you have a situation, so you can see situations kind of above the triangle. So situation of any kind, this can be waking up for the day. This can be going into work. This can be stopping and getting a drink at the gas station, whatever it is. Any situation is going to start a chain of events. So this triangle is essentially working all day long within people. You have a situation that starts a chain of events, thoughts followed by emotions and behaviors. Every single CBT triangle is going to be depicted the same, with thoughts being at the top of the triangle. If you have a CBT triangle and your thoughts is at the bottom where emotions and behaviors is, you're looking at the wrong triangle, and whoever made that needs to be talked to because that's not correct. It always starts with the thoughts, and then it's followed by emotions and or behaviors. Okay. So that's why emotions and behaviors will always be at the bottom of the triangle. So one of the things that I do with people in therapy, just to kind of get the wheels turning, is I will actually hand them a copy of this triangle, and I will have them cover up thoughts. I'll say, okay, so cover up thoughts with your hand and tell me what you're left with. And they're like, well, emotions and behaviors. And I say, correct. Because what you find most of the time is that people actually behave based on how they feel. And the thought process is kind of off in the distance. We don't even know what happened to that because people react based on how they feel. You're going to learn more about that when we dive into dialectical behavioral therapy and something called the 3 states of mind. We'll get into that a little bit later, but people will react based on how they feel without realizing your behavior and emotion is stemmed from your thought pattern. So if you have a negative thought pattern, more times than not, your emotion behavior is going to be negative and it's not going to make any sense. You're going to learn why I'm going to say it doesn't make any sense again as we get a little bit going. What I'm going to do in these first few videos, you're actually going to see me break down the thoughts, break down the emotions, break down the behaviors. So what we're going to do with this, in the thought piece, you are going to identify what are called thinking errors. Okay, so I want you to think of this as you're doing math. Yes, we are going to do a math activity in some later videos. But if you're going through and doing math and you continually have errors in your equations, you're going to get the wrong answer. Because when you have an error, the answer is going to be wrong. It doesn't make any sense. The answer is not going to make sense because you messed it up. There was an error somewhere in the equation. Okay, you can think of this triangle as an equation. If you have an error in the thought process, yeah, your emotion and behavior is not going to make any sense. They're probably going to be negative, and it's just not going to be a very good day. So I'm going to help you, number one, identify what thinking errors are. Number two, I'm going to guide you through a list of thinking errors with an example so you can kind of start to see, oh, I use that thinking error actually on a daily basis and I didn't even know what I was doing. Okay, that's what we're going to do first. Then I'm going to guide you through an activity called Mr. Murder Man. Mr. Murder Man, you cannot find it online. It is something that I created. If you are a therapist watching this video, once we get through that skill, if you would like to create one of your own, I'm totally okay with that. I have not copywritten it. Like I said, I'm trying to give this information as freely as I possibly can. And a lot of people are like, Ashley, how the hell does murder tie into my thinking errors? And I was like, well, you'll see. When we do the activity, some people catch on, some people do not. Okay, so we're going to identify errors in your thoughts, and then I'm going to give you a skill set to kind of counteract and just start thinking about those thinking errors a little bit more. Then we're going to move on to emotion, and we're going to kind of break down emotions, but what I'm really going to focus on is that emotion of anxiety. I'm going to show you how detrimental it is to tell yourself you're anxious, because what you're feeling is not anxiety most of the time. So I'm going to break that emotion piece down and show you kind of how to find more appropriate emotions so the brain can essentially get through the day with a better behavior and a better thought process. Okay. Then we're going to break down behaviors, and we're going to dive into what are called behavioral egos. We are going to use a model from Dr. Eric Berne. I believe it was created back in the 1950s, 60s, and it was used within transactional analysis, but we are going to show you why people behave the way they do. Okay, we're going to do this showing 5 different behavioral egos. I'm going to show you 4 of the egos that can be detrimental and 1 where you want to be. So we're going to break all of this down, and then you're going to be able to kind of put it all back together to kind of see how this kind of all works. Now, one more thing I want to do before we end this video and I move on to thoughts is, in this triangle, there are no arrows on the triangle, but if you go into Google and you look at some of the CBT triangles, a lot of them will have arrows kind of pointing towards one another. And the reason being is you essentially can't have one without the other. If you go into a situation, it's not like you just have a thought and a behavior. You do have an emotion. It's just whether or not you recognize it. Same goes with, like I said earlier, people behave based on how they feel, without even recognizing there is a thought associated with what just happened. So if you see one with arrows on it, it's because you can't have one without the other. We just need to get you to a spot where you are recognizing each piece. And that's what I'm going to do, is break down each individual piece of the triangle for you. Okay, before we end this video, I am just going to read the slide. CBT is a therapy modality used to identify and then change negative, destructive, and or disturbing thoughts that lead to negative, destructive, and or disturbing emotions and behaviors. Okay, that's a mouthful. All it means is your thoughts are going to dictate how you think or how you feel and behave. This modality is taught by way of the CBT triangle pictured on the screen. This starts with the situation, which starts the chain of events, thoughts that lead to emotions and behaviors. Okay, try not to overcomplicate it. I know it sounds like a mouthful, but just remember, anytime I have a situation, I start a chain of events that consist of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. I am going to help you break each one of those down. Stay tuned. Your next video is actually going to be the identification of thinking errors, what thinking errors are, and then you're ultimately going to do a math activity to kind of see at what capacity your brain is working at before we give you the skill set to kind of start to dismantle some of these. Okay. I hope you've liked it so far. Again, questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me, and stay tuned for that second video on as we dive into thoughts, emotions, behaviors. And we're going to start with thoughts. Okay. See you guys later.